Welcome back. Today I am joined with Synergy Chief Financial Officer Christine Tucker. We're talking fraud today and what to look for. So let's jump right in and let's start off with what are some of the trends we're seeing with some fraud activity as of late?
Yeah, so there's lots about, and I think one of the things that's maybe a misnomer or a misconception is things like, who does this? People automatically think of these criminals and they break into your house and they steal your stuff, and it really has a criminal element. But really what we're seeing is it has more to do with people that have access to your stuff every day. Wow. So caregivers, family members, things like that. It's really unfortunate, but we are seeing a rise in that.
Okay, and check fraud is still a thing. I know a lot of people maybe don't use checks anymore, but for the people who do, it's still quite common. So how are people vulnerable with a check?
Yeah, so I think what happens with checks is we often think of them just as paper.
Yeah.
They have a lot of information about us on them. So they have our name, our address, our phone number. They also have all of our banking information encoded on the bottom. And so I think the danger is people don't treat them like cash. So people leave them on the seats of their trucks, and they leave their trucks running in a parking lot, and people steal the checks. And so when they do that, then they'll forge the signature, and they'll either take it to their FI, so they might write it to themselves. They might also take it to an unsuspecting third party who might cash it for them, and then the person that's causing the fraud actually gets away with the cash, and that poor business person or individual is out the money in the end.
Wow, I'm learning a lot about checks. Okay, and so a lot of people are stemming away from using cash and checks. So with the use of a card, are they becoming at risk as well?
Yeah, so you make a great point. So you're right, checks are still predominant a lot in business, so that's where you see a lot of the check fraud. But for consumers, it really comes down to cards. And the biggest danger is people not realizing how important it is. One, it's like cash. Yeah. And two, they have a 4-digit code that they punch in, right? People aren't vigilant about ensuring that they cover up the PIN pad when they're punching in their code. Or, my kid, I want them to run into the store and I want them to get me some sugar, and so I give them my card and the PIN number, and people think nothing of that, and 99% of the time, you're okay. The problem is that doesn't happen all the time. All of a sudden you have someone who needs some cash quickly, and they now know your PIN number. They get it, and we can't protect you from that because you've actually broke your agreement that you agree to keep that unique to yourself.
Okay, so then it's kind of on you at that point if you were to give out your PIN.
Exactly. And so in addition to that, why it's so important is if you left your wallet on the seat of your truck, say, that's a great example, and someone knows your PIN number, and they might even just take your card and they might call in to your financial institution call center, pretend to be you, and actually be able to get your online banking reset.
Okay, wow, these people are thinking then.
They think much further ahead than I do.
Yeah, definitely. And then identity theft is another common tactic we hear about. So how are scammers getting this information?
So probably the easiest way, one, I've already said your checks have a lot of information on it. Your mail, believe it or not, that comes in your mailbox or through your post office box has a lot of information, and we tend to take statements and stuff like that and just toss them in the trash. And it's amazing how much information is actually on those, and these fraudsters put that all together to be able to try and impersonate you to be able to get into your online banking.
Wow. And then really quickly, we're pretty much out of time here, but I do want to ask about wire fraud because we are seeing a lot more of these scams come through email and text.
Yeah, so the great one is where you have a grandchild maybe away in Mexico or something, and someone gets into your grandson's email, and they email and say, you need to wire this money because your grandson's been hurt and they're in the hospital. And so the key is, don't just wire money. Make sure you physically talk to either your grandson or their parent or somebody to make sure that it is legitimate.
Okay, well, great tips as always. This is Synergy Chief Financial Officer Christine Tucker, and she will have more details and information on some trends and fraud, unfortunately, which is hopefully no one sees that. But you're here to help us so we don't get to that point, so we'll have more in the next hour.